He was Commander-in-Chief for 8 years and the 44th President of the United States. And he would represent the full embodiment of change.
On behalf of the great state of Illinois, crossroads of a nation, land of Lincoln, let me express my deepest gratitude.
Honolulu, an enchanting oasis. August 21st, 1959, is when Hawaii would gain statehood and become an official state of the U.S., which would precede the birth of Barack 2 years later, August 4th, 1961. He was born to Barack Sr., a successful Kenyan economist, and Ann Dunham, who was an accomplished American anthropologist. At the age of 2, Barack's father would leave to study at Harvard University. Shortly thereafter, in 1964, Ann and Barack Sr. divorced. Obama would see his father only once more, for a brief visit when Obama was 10 years old. Later, Ann would remarry, this time to another foreign student, Lolo Sotoro, from Indonesia, with whom she had a second child, Maya. Obama lived for several years in Jakarta with his half-sister, mother, and stepfather. While there, Obama attended both a government-run school where he received instruction in Islam and a Catholic private school where he took part in Christian schooling. He returned to Hawaii in 1971 and lived in a modest apartment, sometimes with his grandparents and other times with his mother. She remained for a time in Indonesia, returned to Hawaii, and then went abroad again, partly to pursue on a PhD before divorcing Sotoro in 1980. For a brief period, his mother was aided by government food stamps. The family mostly lived a middle-class existence. In 1979, Obama graduated from Pana House School, an elite college preparatory academy in Honolulu. Obama would later attend Occidental College, a suburb of Los Angeles, for 2 years, and then transferred to Columbia University in New York, where he would receive a bachelor's in political science in 1983. His professors would pressure him to take his academics more seriously, and Obama would experience intellectual growth during his college years. He led a rather ascetic life and read works of literature and philosophy, William Shakespeare, Friedrich Nietzsche, Toni Morrison, and others. After serving for a couple of years as a writer and editor for a Business International Corporation, a research, publishing, and consulting firm in Manhattan, he took a position in 1985 as a community organizer on Chicago's largely impoverished Far South Side. He returned to school 3 years later and graduated magna cum laude in 1991 from Harvard University Law School.
And I remember that the black law students had organized an orientation for the first-year students. And one of the persons who spoke at that orientation was Professor Bell. And I remember him sauntering up to the front and not giving us a lecture, but engaging us in a conversation.
Well, Ms. Gonzalez, I'm afraid you haven't done anything to demonstrate you're suited to regain custody of your son. I'm afraid this request is denied.
Come here, make your money, do what you need to do, and that's just the bottom line.
Hey, who's that babe on stage?
That's Butterfly, new phenomenon.
You don't have to be something that you're not wanting to be.
Homelessness is the result of making poor decisions, Reed.
What single attribute have you acquired to offer to this young man? That is, if you were indeed to regain custody of your son.
I'm afraid of having nothing to give. And right now, I have nothing to give.
Ma'am, you can't stop here and give away stuff to the homeless people. You got to keep going.
You stay safe out here, hon. There's a lot of human traffickers.
Hey, this old girl. Picture you seen.
Oh, yeah. That's old girl from the spot the other night.
That money didn't come from Dino, did it?
She owe me loot, yo.
I finally understand why people lose their minds out here.
Yeah. Yeah, she over here like a sitting duck. Make sure your next move is your best move. So we gonna make it happen.
Please, God, let me grow big, beautiful wings so I can rise above this madness like a butterfly.
Although I'm honored, and I think people can say that my election symbolizes some progress, at least within the small confines of the legal community, I think it's real important to keep the focus on the broader world out there and see that for a lot of kids, the doors that have been open to me aren't open to them.
Barack was the first African American to serve as president of Harvard Law Review. While a summer associate in 1989 at the Chicago law firm of Sidney Austin, Obama had met Chicago native Michelle Robinson, a young lawyer at the firm. The two would later marry in 1992. After receiving his law degree, Obama moved to Chicago and became active in the Democratic Party. He organized Project Vote, a drive that registered tens of thousands of African Americans on voting rolls, and that is credited with helping Democrat Bill Clinton win Illinois and capture the presidency in 1992. The effort also helped make Carol Moseley Braun, an Illinois state legislator, the first African American woman elected to the U.S. Senate. During this period, Obama wrote his first book and saw it published, the memoir Dreams from My Father, in 1995. Is the story of Obama's search for his biracial identity by tracing the lives of his now deceased father and his extended family in Kenya. Obama lectured on constitutional law at the University of Chicago and worked as an attorney on civil rights issues. In 1996, he was elected to the Illinois Senate, where most notably he helped pass legislation that tightened campaign finance regulations, expanded health care to the poor, and reformed criminal justice and welfare laws. In 2004, he was elected to the U.S. Senate, defeating Republican Alan Keyes in the first U.S. Senate race in which the two leading candidates were African Americans. While campaigning for the U.S. Senate, Obama gained national recognition by delivering the keynote address at the Democratic National Convention in July of 2004.
That all across the country, from Florida to Oregon, from Washington to Maine, the people will rise up in November, and John Kerry will be sworn in as president, and John Edwards will be sworn in as vice president, and this country will reclaim its promise, and out of this long political darkness, a brighter day will come. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you. Thank you.
The speech wove a personal narrative of Obama's biography and the theme that all Americans are connected in ways that transcend political, cultural, and geographical differences. The address lifted Obama's once obscure memoir onto bestsellers list. And after taking office the following year, Obama quickly became a major figure in his political party. A trip to visit his father home in Kenya in August of 2006 gained international media attention, and Obama's star continued to ascend. His second book, The Audacity of Hope, in 2006, a mainstream polemic on his vision for the United States, was published weeks later, instantly becoming a major bestseller. In February of 2007, he announced at the old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois, where Abraham Lincoln had served as state legislator, that he would seek the Democratic Party's presidential nomination in 2008.
I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America.
Obama's personal charisma, stirring oratory, and his campaign promise to bring change to the established political system resonated with many Democrats, especially young and minority voters. On January 3, 2008, Obama won a surprise victory in the first major nominating contest, the Iowa caucus, over Senator Hillary Clinton, who was the overwhelming favorite to win the nomination. 5 days later, however, Obama finished second to Clinton in the New Hampshire primary, and a bruising and sometimes bitter primary race ensued. Obama won more than a dozen states, including Illinois, his home state, and Missouri, a traditional political bellwether on Super Tuesday, February 5th. No clear frontrunner for the nomination emerged. However, as Clinton won many states with large populations, such as California and New York, Obama produced an impressive string of victories later in the month, handily winning the 11 primaries and caucuses that immediately followed Super Tuesday, which gave him a significant lead in pledged delegates. His momentum slowed in early March when Clinton won significant victories in Ohio and Texas. Though still maintaining his edge in delegates, Obama lost the key Pennsylvania primary on April 22nd. 2 weeks later, he lost a close contest in Indiana, but won the North Carolina primary by large margins, widening his delegate lead over Clinton. She initially had a big lead in so-called superdelegates. Democratic Party officials allocated votes at the convention that were unaffiliated with the state primary results. But with Obama winning more states and actual delegates, many peeled away from Hillary and went to Obama. On June 3rd, following the final primaries in Montana and South Dakota, the number of delegates pledged to Obama surpassed the total necessary to claim the Democratic nomination. On August 27th, Obama became the first African American to be nominated for the presidency of the United States by either major party, and went on to challenge Republican Senator John McCain for the country's highest office. McCain criticized Obama, still a first-term senator, and being too inexperienced for the job. To counter Obama, selected Joe Biden, a veteran senator from Delaware, who had a long resume for foreign policy expertise, to be his vice presidential running mate. Obama and McCain waged a fierce and expensive contest. Obama, still bolstered by a fever of popular support, eschewed federal financing and campaign and raised hundreds of millions of dollars, much of it coming in small donations and over the internet from a record number of donors. Obama's fundraising advantage helped him buy massive amounts of television advertising and organize deep grassroots organizations in key battleground states that had voted Republican in previous presidential cycles. The two candidates offered a stark ideological choice for voters. Obama called for a swift withdrawal from most combat forces in Iraq and a restructuring of tax policy that would bring more relief to lower and middle class voters, while McCain said the United States must wait for a full victory in Iraq and charged that Obama's rhetoric was long on eloquence but short on substance. Just weeks before the election, Obama's campaign seized on the economic meltdown that had resulted from the catastrophic failure of U.S. banks and financial institutions in September, calling it a result of the Republican free market driven policies of the 8-year administration of George W. Bush. Obama won the election, capturing nearly 53% of the popular vote and 365 electoral votes. Not only did he hold all states that John Kerry had won in 2004, but he also captured a number of states, Colorado, Florida, Nevada, Ohio, and Virginia, that the Republicans had carried in the previous two presidential elections. On election night, tens of thousands gathered in Chicago's Grant Park to see Obama claim victory. Shortly after his win, Obama resigned from the Senate. On January 20th, 2009, hundreds of thousands turned out in Washington, D.C. to witness Obama taking the oath of office as President of the United States. And it would signify the single greatest achievement for an African American in U.S. history. This single feat would represent the greatest source of inspiration for blacks outside of the realm of sports and entertainment. In an effort to improve the image of the United States abroad, which many believed had been damaged during the Bush administration, Obama took a number of steps that indicated a significant shift in tone. He signed an executive order that banned excessive interrogation techniques, ordered the closing of the controversial military detention facility in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Within a year, a deadline that was not met, proposed a fresh start to strain relations with Russia, and traveled to Cairo in June of 2009 to deliver a historical speech in which he reached out to the Muslim world. Largely as a result of these efforts, Obama was awarded the 2009 Nobel Peace Prize Award. Yet some left-wing critics complained that he actually had adopted and even escalated most of the war and national security policies of his predecessor. Indeed, when Obama accepted the Nobel Peace Prize in December, he said evil does exist in the world, and there will be times when nations, acting individually or in concert, will find the use of force not only necessary, but morally justified. Notwithstanding that tough talk, there were others who criticized Obama for issuing only a mild condemnation of the Iranian government's crackdown on pro-democracy dissidents following a disputed election in June 2009. Moreover, the Obama administration's handling of the national security was questioned by some when a Nigerian terrorist trained in Yemen was thwarted in an attempt to bomb an airliner headed for Detroit on Christmas Day of the same year. After enjoying soaring popularity early in his term, Obama became the target of increasing criticism, largely due to the slow pace of economic recovery and continued high unemployment rates, but also because of the widespread opposition to Democratic efforts to reform healthcare insurance policy, the signature issue of the Obama presidential campaign. Obama had entered office promising to bring an end to partisan squabbling and legislative gridlock. Yet in the wake of the failure to obtain any real bipartisan cooperation, congressional Democrats, according to Republicans, had settled into governing without substantive Republican involvement. Republicans, on the other hand, according to Democrats, had become the party of no, seeking to obstruct Democratic legislative initiatives without offering real alternative proposals. It was this highly polarized environment that Obama and the Democrats attempted to enact health care insurance reform. Health care reform, popular with Americans during the election, became less so as legislators presented the proposed changes to their constituents in town hall meetings in the summer of 2009 that sometimes erupted into shouting matches between those of opposing viewpoints. It was at this time that the populist Tea Party movement, comprising of libertarian-minded conservatives, emerged in opposition to the Democratic health care proposals, but more generally in opposition to what they saw as excessive taxes and government involvement in the private sector. Republicans across the board complained that Democratic proposals constituted a government takeover of health care and would prove too costly and mortgage the future of generations to come. Their opposition to the Democratic plans was virtually lockstep. In many respects, the president left the initiative for health care reform in the hands of congressional leaders. House Democrats responded in November of 2009 by passing a bill that called for sweeping reform, including the creation of a public option, a lower-cost government-run program that would act as a competition for private insurance companies. The Senate was more deliberate in its consideration. Obama seemed to let conservative Democrat Senator Max Baucus take the lead in that body at the head of the group of 6, comprising 3 Democrats and 3 Democratic senators. The resulting bill that was passed by the Senate, holding the allegiance of all 58 Democrats, plus independents, Bernie Sanders of Vermont and Joe Lieberman of Connecticut. It barely survived a filibuster attempt by Republicans, proved to provide far fewer changes than its House counterpart, most notably leaving out the public option. Before a compromise could be reached on the 2 bills, the triumph of Republican Scott Brown in a special election for the seat formerly held by Senator Ted Kennedy destroyed Democrat filibuster-proof majority. Many Democrats believed this meant that they would have to start over, as Republicans have been demanding. Obama and other Democrat leaders, especially Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, thought otherwise and continued to push for passage. Obama went on the offensive, skillfully moderating a nationally telecast summit of Republicans and Democrats, at which the pros and cons of the Democratic proposals were debated. He also took his case outside the Beltway, in speech after speech, emphasizing the message that health care was a right and not a privilege, and increasingly sharpening his criticism of the insurance industry. In March 2010, in an attempt to win the support of Democrats in the House who opposed the legislation because they felt it would weaken limitations on abortion funding, Obama promised to sign an executive order guaranteeing that it would not. With that crucial group on board, Pelosi confidently brought the Senate bill to the House floor for a special vote on Sunday night, March 21st. The bill passed 219 to 212. 34 Democrats and all the Republicans voted against it, and was followed by passage in a second bill that was proposed, fixes for the Senate bill. Democrats plan to employ the relatively infrequently used procedure known as reconciliation, which requires only a simple majority for passage. To get these fixes through the Senate, speaking on television shortly after the House vote, Obama told the country, "This is what change looks like." On March 23rd, Obama signed the bill into law. Senate Republican efforts to force another House vote on the bill of proposed fixes included the introduction of more than 40 amendments that were voted down along party lines. Ultimately, on March 25th, the Senate voted 56-43 to pass the bill, which, because of procedural violations in some of its language, had to be returned to the House, where it passed again by a vote of 220 to 207. No Republicans in either house voted for the bill. The legislation would, once all its elements had taken effect over the next 4 years, prohibit denial of coverage on the basis of pre-existing conditions and extend health care to some 30 million previously uninsured Americans. The bill made the attainment of health care insurance mandatory for all citizens, but it also called for a tax increase on the wealthiest Americans that would largely bankroll subsidized for premium payments for families earning less than $88,000 per year. Moreover, the bill promised a tax credit to small businesses that could provide coverage for their employees. In some corners, the bill was considered an unconstitutional government takeover. Politically, Obama's accomplishments were numerous and varied. The most significant of them, arguably, is the Affordable Care Act. With this one victory, Obama had achieved what generations of Democrat presidents had tried and failed to do. The passage of the Affordable Care Act ranks among the accomplishments of FDR for instituting Social Security and Lyndon B. Johnson for Medicare. And the Affordable Care Act would epitomize Obama's legacy to highlight many of his other feats, such as environmental actions. The Paris Agreement often gets top billing, not to mention marriage equality for the LGBTQ community. He was responsible for shutting down Iran's nuclear weapons program without firing a single shot. And he would usher the dawn of a new era with Cuba after 55 years of discord. Under his leadership, military forces took out Osama bin Laden to make a profound statement to the world and bring closure to the events of 9/11. In 2012, President Barack Obama would win a contentious campaign against GOP frontrunner Mitt Romney to win his second term in office. If he had lost re-election, there would have still been the legacy coming from the fact that he was the first African American to have won the White House. Having won, he could now hammer into place the Affordable Care Act that would have been in jeopardy if he had lost the election. Now it would be a fixed and featured part of his presidential terms. What's more, Obama was in position to reap the advantages of governing at a time of growth, with a slow and steady recovery of the U.S. economy. He already was a groundbreaking president, as the first person of color to win the nation's highest office. By defeating Romney, he also joins the elite ranks of just 16 other men in history to have managed to win the White House twice. And even more impressive, he would serve 2 terms scandal-free. And most notably, Obama has forged and energized a coalition of the most rapidly growing parts of the U.S. electorate: Hispanics, African Americans, and members of the young millennial generation, plus many whites, especially highly educated women, to give Democrats the same enduring majority that FDR built in his era. His time in office was most exemplary, as it was inspiring. He was the 44th President of the United States. He was Barack Obama, Commander-in-Chief.
I'm very proud of what you've done. It has been an honor and a privilege to work side by side with you to strengthen our democracy And with that, I just have two more words to say. Obama out.
Thanks for watching. Click, like, and subscribe. And if you want to contribute to our channel, refer to our Cash App link below. Thanks for watching.